Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Nature Folklore Sessions. And this is different. It's Wednesday, and it's 24th of August, 2022. And I don't have a theme to open up with because right up until a couple of seconds ago, I was still trying to put photos up for you. So I've been sort of behind, and now I've kind of thrown the green screen off. So excuse me while I sort out one or two tech issues before we get this show completely on the road. And I'm so pleased that you could join us. Join me. I haven't got any guests today. This is very sort of impromptu. It's to close off what I've been doing for the Lanessa through the past few weeks. But this is another session of exploring nature-centered folklore. This is the second, well, it's actually the last. It's a new thing. I couldn't finish off talking about the stone circles, so I've kind of retitled this to be Stone Circles and Harvest. And that's what I'll call the whole series next year. And I'm going to be adding more. This just goes on forever. And I said on Sunday when I broadcasted the earlier part of this, I was going to cover Grange. I'll just do a few minutes on Wednesday. But the more I thought about my own memories and talking with other people, this has just got longer and longer. So I hope you'll find this absolutely fascinating. It's a fascinating subject to me. But really, last year I thought, the Crom Dubh and Crom Cruach story, I'll extend it to two sessions, then three. Now it looks like I need to go to four. Probably make them shorter somehow next year. Anyway, but this is the first time I think I've broadcasted Nature Folklore away from being Sunday. This is the first time from here at Lois Dadanáin. Is at home. So I hope you're getting a signal okay. I hope you're actually getting my voice because everything was quickly thrown together. And you can actually see me, of course. So great, we've got the new internet service. It gives me more flexibility. And before getting into this, I have placed 3 question polls on Facebook Nature Folklore Community World Group, and I've put them on my profile on Facebook as well. I'd love if you could check your choices on these, please, if you've not done so already. And this will help me shape the future of nature folklore broadcasting. Now, the 3 poll questions, what I'm asking is, what day should I host Nature Folklore? At the moment, the Sunday is actually the most popular. I'm here on a Wednesday. That's the second most popular. What time should I start? Nobody likes the 2 o'clock that I was doing on Sunday. Everyone's thinking between 4 and 8. Well, I'm kicking off at 7. How long should it be? It seems I started off doing half hour. It got expanded to an hour, then an hour and a half. And it seems the hour is popular, but I'm going to actually try and perhaps wean down to 30 minutes again and maybe do 2 30 minutes in a week. That's my thought, but I'm going to watch your results on the polls and what you're indicating, and I'll just move this whole thing around to what's popular around you. So I'm looking forward to what you have to say, what you request. And so thank you for any of the votes and cross-section of views. That's lovely. And I'll adjust Nature Folklore accordingly. And I'm so thrilled that we got this flexibility now. I just hope everything works for you okay. And we're really then in the gravy, I think is what some people say. And as I say, Nature Folklore is brought to you due to the support of our subscribers there. Highly appreciated, and probably some of you are already here, or you're going to be later. Some of you don't like going through the PayPal because they go through the Patreon because they like the PayPal. They use the PayPal. So this is another option. If you just want to use a card, there you can go on buymeacoffee.com as well. Nature Folklore, that's good for the card. Or if you just want to send some cash, message me and put some cash in an envelope. Any euro, dollar, or pound, it helps me cover the expenses, keeps the show afloat, because I do actually pay quite a bit per month. I'm not making my expenses yet, so thank you all for the support, because I couldn't put this show on without it. So that's absolutely fantastic. So I think really, let's see what lovely people are with us already. Not the crowd that we usually get on a Sunday, because this is be unfamiliar territory suddenly at 7 o'clock. So actually I did, it was last Thursday, didn't I? That because of various problems, I actually did an encore where the Sunday broadcast was rebroadcasted on the Thursday. And not many people actually viewed on the rebroadcast, but goodness me, the people that actually watched it after that was quite incredible. Cliff Carr's here. We've got someone who's come to the show on this strange time, very unusual time. So thank you very much, Cliff. Glad you're with us. I'm sure you'll find this pretty exciting stuff. And as I say, today, this is it's ended up being a new part 4 of the Crom Cruach-Crom Dubh epic. And I'm actually retitling this to be Stone Circles and Harvest. And that's what I'll call it next year. That's the renaming. Because I'm sure what's of immense interest to a lot of people is the stone circles. There's a lot of stone circle enthusiasts out there. And very few people even yet know who Crom Cruach and Crom Dubh are, even though that's a phenomenal amount of the folklore, especially for the reasons why we have farming. So I'm a little bit behind on pictures. I didn't get all the photos up that I wanted to. So to quickly update you to catch up on the previous 3 episodes, isn't it? I referred to how we've enjoyed a revival of reverence to what we now call the Celtic wheel. I think I've got the picture up for that one, a Celtic wheel somewhere. Let's get into some pictures now. There we go. That's one version of a Celtic wheel I've been showing you over the last few weeks. And during the first part, I asked, how did settled farming commence? Now, one essential component was actually knowing when to sow and reap. Seems simple enough, doesn't it? But we got clocks. So in the ancient times, with no clocks, no calendars, no phone apps, how did these first farmers know when to sow and reap? Now, I mentioned how the ancient lunar month calendars were certainly well used, long before solar calendars were created. And what was needed before settled farming was the human abilities of logic and recording applied to sky observations, and to those observations, the human interventions of creating systems of configurations. And with configurations, humans managed to create the concepts of time and distance. And of course, today we think time and distance came when the Earth was built. No, humans did that through configurations and observations. And from those configurations of time and distance, combined with those sky observations, the organic development of the crafts and sciences of geometry happened, mathematics, needed all that background to make that happen. Now, from all those observations, configurations, geometry, and mathematics, what is likely to have developed, and I've shown some ancient examples in the past editions, are star charts, star charting. Sorry, I haven't got any pictures today, but this is why circular stones that we call stone circles were erected and adjusted to observe and record alignments. And I say, I'm going to Grange. This is a lovely picture of Grange there. Kenneth Williams, Shadows of Stone picture there. Absolutely gorgeous. And right. Now, I talked about the discoveries of most ancient farming practices and how the cultures formed. And these culture movements, they were between the Black Sea and, here we go, the Black Sea and the Balkans. I showed that map in other editions, but there you go. From there, we've got the Blagotin culture, and I talked a lot about that. I'm going to avoid that. Up to the Pomeranian, the Slavs up in Poland, and that getting up to the Baltic states there, crossed over to the UK, over to Ireland. And also, I talked about the movement along the Danube from the west to the northwest, and the Danube movement we seem to be much more familiar with because that brought us through our stories to the Tuatha Dé Danann. But I focus more on the other crowd, the ones that moved through to Pomerania, which is near Gdansk in Poland today. But both of those cultures, the cultures that went up to Pomerania and moved west, and the Danube people, they both arrived on what are England, Wales, Scotland, Isle of Man, and Ireland today. So I started with an emphasis on the farming culture from around 7000 BC on land that's now Serbia. And this was a time told of in stories of the remarkable Vinca culture. I haven't got that map up today. But from Pomerania, I link you to the mythological stories of a chieftain called Tiganmas. And through the old stories, Tiganmas is said to be a wise leader who brought the components of cultured civilization, as we might call it today, from what may have been originated from the Vinca area of Serbia, beside the Danube there, South Danube. I showed you the pictures before of the Ironmouth area that's by there, and eventually arrived in Ireland. Now, this includes the skills of cereal farming. When I say organized civilization, you've got cereal farming, smithing of gold and silver, and then bronze, of course, dyeing of fabrics, and the making of musical instruments and art. And from Tiganmas, I move forward to the mythology of the Fomorians. And then through part 2, about an area that we now know as being Maassluis. And that's, I'll give you the ordnance survey of that there. There you go, Maassluis, if you can make a point. I'm quickly flashing that. If you want to know more about that, look at the previous episodes. Mysterious area within County Cavan. And I focused on Lunacer and the commencements of harvesting of the cereal crops and the threshing. And it may have been interpreted through the mythologies of Tiganmas, the Lough of the Tuatha Dé Danann, the interpretations of Lough, which is more familiar to most people than Tiganmas. I think the mythologies and the stories got fairly mixed up over the centuries and merged together. And also through Tiganmas came the mysterious interpretations of Crom Cruach, especially over Maassluis there. And Crom Cruach range from a sheaf of the first cut barley or oats on a cut down pole. I haven't got the cut down, well, I'll show you a cut down pole shortly, but I love this picture of the lad who's impersonating a cut down tree pole, and he's wearing the first sheaf on his head. That's actually a Serbian photograph there. But imagine that lad being a pole in the middle of the threshing circle, and he's wearing the first cut barley or oats, being very significant, and as a thanksgiving, put onto a pole as a thank you to the sun god, or a lot of women this time they'd be thinking of Onya or Gronya, whatever graces you, and in thanksgiving for the gold, cereal, and the harvest. There you have it, and that's what it is. And of course, that translated through a gold or silver idol, because, as I said, smithing came in. And there's a major story of Maassluis that comes out of the Dimchenkas from the 12th century, talking about the gold or sometimes silver circle surrounded by the 12 bronze statues. Right, I'm going back to the cut sheaf on a pole a little bit. That had a practical purpose, because that pole was used for tethering of the threshing animals. And once the grain was separated from the straw, some of that straw was actually celebrated for the season. And of course, that's a lovely example again. Well, he'll be using that straw. He might be a mummer or a straw boy or something like that. And the costumes will be made through the winter for the winter events as well. Ramboys, of course, etc. And I suspect in ancient times, those straw was used to impersonate Crom Dubh, but I'm going to talk about Crom Dubh more later. And then I told a couple of Patrick and Crozier stories, and because they're probably stories from the 12th century, and they're told of banishing Crom Cruach from Maassluis, and Patrick accusing him of being a demon or a devil, and one of the stories is that gold idol and the 12 bronze stones just saw Patrick coming, and they just jumped down into the soil. So, as I say, threshing, yeah, I've talked about that one. And I also then went on to talk about the Killycluggan stone. That's the copy. There's actually Killycluggan. As I say, to find out more about that, because I need to get onto the Grange Circle now, watch the previous episode and I talk about that, because the original Crom stone was rediscovered in 1921 and buried in a lovely stone circle in the Killycluggan townland. Anyway, but there's a lot to that. As I say, go back to that. It's a fascinating story. But I'm at last going to move forwards and I'm going to get on to the star of the show, as I say, is Grange. I'm going to talk about Grange Mac in County Cavan to the it's by Lough in County Limerick. And because this all connects up, what I've said so far is amazing links to the lore of the cultures of the Balkans to the Baltic. And you'll see some name similarities. I'm going to share some very surprising name similarities. And I think any Stone Circle fans are going to find this ultra fascinating. Now, we've got a few people more watching as long as I can. Then to the tape. Good information, John. Thank you, Susan, for being here. And Christine Henry, thanks for being on board as well. Lovely to have you here. So, right, let's get on to it. The lore of the Grange Circles, especially the Circle B by Lough in Limerick, and get to my... And there's again, I'll bring the Ken Williams up, because that's quite a recent photo of his from Shadow and Stone. And it's a really good drone photo that he got. And he does his usual trickery to get brilliant photos. So that's what I'm going to be focused on. That large green circle is known as a leash. And of course, where I'm living now is Lois Dadanáin. And leash meaning, translating out, sort of describing a sacred hill or a ceremonial enclosure. We call it ceremonial now. So what I think you'll find is the most fascinating part of the series is what I'm about to share, because it does involve the stone circles. Now, to recap a little more on the series again, I started with an ancient draft of observations, maybe started by the Persians, and this developed into configurations, geometry, and mathematics. And the stones erected in circles, they ended up being able to establish workable alignments that could be used by the ancients to develop the ancient geometry and calendars using the mathematics as they were developing them. And then this was certainly happening around the Balkans, and they're sort of referred to by Serbian and Balkan history as being sun circles. And farming then developed through knowing these configurations and knowing these calculations. So it seemed that the stone circles took on an additional use. They started as sun circles, observation circles, plotting calendars. And then once they plotted the calendars, then they came to the practical purpose of being threshing circles, including the tradition of mounting the first sheaf, as I mentioned, the first sheaf cut, put onto a pole as a gratitude to the sun god, sun goddess. And the threshing animals were conveniently tethered to them. Do I have a tethering? I will show you a tethering example very soon. Now I'm going to refer to the massive Grange Circle B. There are circles A and C nearby. That's actually A, but public access to them is not really allowed at the moment. And there's also, not too far away, I'm just getting some water here so I don't overdo hopefully you don't mess the equipment. There's also a Circle O that's not far away. So that's C that you can't get to. Don't have it used to have public access, but I'm not going into it. Anyway, the Grange Circle, another photo of it. There you go. There's Grange Circle B, the largest stone circle in Ireland. And a lot of you are probably familiar with this, even visited, especially if you've been part of Amantha Murphy's pilgrimages. She's one of the groups that go there. But I doubt that she actually covers Crom Cruach-Crom Dubh there. Anyway, the Grange circles, they're on private land. And the land is owned by the Casey family, is the best way I can put it. And they live in a farmhouse opposite the B. This is their farmhouse. You might recognize it as you look across from the circle. And Tim Casey, some of you might have met Tim Casey. There he is. He was absolutely wonderful, friendly caretaker. He was a farmer. It was his land. And he was the caretaker of the circle. And he absolutely loved talking to people. And I'm not sure the person on the right, whether it's one of his daughters, Annie or Mary, but certainly on the left, that's Tim. And one of the things he did, he actually did lawn mowing by putting these calves in. And I was looking, I had some beautiful photos when I first went there, lovely calves in there. But this one, if you look closely, there's some calves kind of lying down. But I actually had photos of them grazing, but I can't find them, unfortunately. But the sad thing is, poor Tim there, he passed away during 2018. Wasn't COVID, before the COVID. But Tim loved to be amongst the summer solstice visitors, such as here. He would be amongst them there. And the summer solstice lunasers, at the summer solstice, lunacer, and so on, they were the times that were the main reverences at this circle. That one's still a summer solstice. I have no idea who the lad is on the right, but he obviously loves to come along for the company and the crack. And the nice thing about these celebrations here, because they're dealing with the alignments of the stones, they're meeting up at the sidereal times, not the messy Gregorian modern Gregorian dates. Now, Tim Casey, as I say, he loved the people. He loved to be amongst them when they gathered for these things. He called them Dovnians, is what he called these people. And there's some women there because the solstice, the actual solstice, sets over that large stone, which I'm going to be talking about as well. And he used to call them Crom Dubhians, no matter what their expressions and celebrations were. So I believe that Tim's daughter, Annie Casey, very much took over. But she was at I've met her over at the Lough Visitors Centre, and she's really jolly. She's very welcoming. And I'm sure she'd be very welcoming of the people in the circles. But from people that are at the circles now over Lunasa, they say that Mary, her daughter, has been very much involved and very welcoming with them. So the whole family, very warm, greeting, enthusiastic people, and they just love sharing their land and their circles with these people. Now, the one thing you might be questioning, as I say, Crom Dubh is generally referred to as a masculine deity, but there are people that are there for the feminine deities. And the most popular one that's shared is Anya. And I'm going to talk about her connections to the circle shortly. But what I'm really focusing on is the linking of the croms and the harvest to this circle. It's also unusual for me to give so much focus to stone circles too, on nature folklore or even farming. But this is the lunar month, August it is now, with the Gregorian calendar, the lunar month. So this is truly the time for all of this. So when was the main Grange Circle B built? Let's give you another, let's throw this. That's it, that's before the calves came in. Now, if we knew when the Grange Circle, this temple of Crom Cruach-Crom Dubh was built, then that would help us determine how old Crom Dubh and his deity really is. Now, there's an archaeologist, Helen Roach. I think I've got a picture of her. There she is. She's the one on the right, of course, Helen Roach there. She's around doing very much archaeological stuff right now. And she suggests that the Grange Circle was constructed in the late Bronze Age, about 1000 BC. Now, she is correct. That would make the circle much younger than most other ancient, especially megalithic sites people would calculate or interpret. And it would make this Grange Circle much younger than most megalithic sites around Ireland. Now, common acceptance is this circle was actually, Helen says 1000 BC, but the acceptance is, no, this circle is from 2200 BC to 2000 BC. Now, some recent remarkable photographs by Ken Williams, which I'm going to show a couple more, very informative and spectacular, And as they go to Shadows and Stone, there's a lot more there. Shadows and Stone site. And here we go. Let's see what I've got. I got the circle there with the cattle there. And here we go. What Ken Williams came with his latest photographs is what looks like rock art. He's discovered rock art. Now this rock art, if this is so, and it does look very, he's capturing this on what would be the Samhain sunset thing, and that's the rock art facing what would be the Samhain sunset. Now, if Ken Williams is absolutely correct on that, that would mean the origins would go back even further to 3200 BC because of that style of rock art that's there. And he's saying 3,200 because similar rock art around Ireland has been dated to that. Now, my own question now is whether the stones from an older era, like the rock art stones and some of the other ones, were they actually brought in and integrated into this giant circle when it was built, like Helen Roach said, around 1000 BC? We know that Stonehenge stones have been moved around a lot, so why not? Now, as I say, the current living and working archaeologist Helen Roach, she believes this circle is actually on a site that may have been revered for thousands of years before. She doesn't deny that. And she believes that the huge stones that were craps used for observations in the earliest days, observations for farming, they were actually introduced into the current circle. Look at that massive stone there on the left. And then there's a pile of little ones there. I'm going to talk about those, very important. Now, Helen Roach also believes that a new, larger Bronze Age reconstruction, so when it became, like you got the circle behind me, when it became that large that large construction that she says 1000 BC, then it really changed its use from what it really was. And what I was speculating, of course, was what I was saying in Serbia, they had the sun circles, and that was for their observations and making calendars, and then they became threshing circles. Was this expanded out around 1000 BC to become more practical as a threshing circle? Anyway, archaeologist Sean Peter Reardon, not the writer, there's his book, not so easy to get. And he excavated the Grange stone circle around in 1939, and his work there went on very meticulous for 19 years. And during the excavations, he found over 4,000 pieces of pottery, all broken up, and there's an attempt to put some of the pottery together. And that pottery dated from the early Neolithic to the late Bronze Age. Now, Professor Reardon speculated that those pots were deliberately smashed. There's a sort of recovery there for the smashed pots. And he says he reckons they were smashed against stones after drinking ale from them. Now, actually, I think this thinking was, ale at Lunasa. I'm not sure about that one, because Lunasa is the harvesting of the barley and the oats, but the barley is essential for making ale. So I would have thought if there was drinking of ale in those pots, that's more likely to have happened either at the autumn equinox or even more likely at Samhain. So I speculate Samhain was the ale celebration time, because there is, I'm not sure if I've got the photo in line for you, but there is a beautiful Samhain alignment for the celebration at that time. And of course, I got a lovely series coming up in a few weeks about the alehouse women, and that ale I assumed would have been obtained from the local alehouse women. So that's a lovely pre-Samhain story that I'm going to be sharing with you again. So that's coming up in a few weeks. Anyway, Reardon's team's findings, they were labeled as spanning, they reckon these broken pots span over 2,600 years. And Helen Roach then claimed that those older Reardon findings are actually much older. She accepted those findings were much older than the current stone circle. But one thing about Professor Reardon was he was very skeptical of the Crom Dubh legends that were being connected to this Grange circle. He believed that the Crom Dubh legends of Grange, and I often talk about way the stories have been twisted by Celtic romance times, especially when printing became accessible to many more people. So he believed the Crom Dubh stories actually come from the storytelling of a local 18th century school teacher. And all he was doing was trying to extend the legends of St. Patrick to his pupils when St. Patrick was overcoming Crom Dubh and Mag Slec. However, there's another modern archaeologist, Moya McNeill, and during the 90s, she's still working archaeologist now, but during the 90s, and I don't have a photo, but during the 90s, she pointed out there is an old Gaelic word that's associated with the Grange circle, and that's rannoch. And that's a word not used much today. It's a very old word. And just to take that word being used, then Moya believed that verifies that the Grange story, especially of Crom Cruach, actually does go into ancient history and wasn't actually invented by that schoolmaster. In fact, he might even be retelling that story, but maybe only have fragments of the local story, so use the Mag Slec ones to kind of pop it out for his pupils. That's just me speculating. And as I say, I'm going to explain rannoch later. And of course, there's one beautiful place, rannoch in Scotland, that's in Perthshire. It's west of Perth. Beautiful place there, Rannoch Moor, the Rannoch Loch, and there's a little village of Rannoch. Anyway, that might be related name-wise as well. Now, the current Grange stone B is the largest, as I say, perhaps the finest ancient stone circle in Ireland. There we go again. That's another lovely drone picture, very precise one there, isn't it? And what you've got there's 113 standing stones now in that circle. And in the center is a post hole. And an alignments thing. This is an artist impression. That's the Grange circle there. See the pole in the middle? It's sort of given a bit of a shadow. See that entrance there? That entrance is what's the Samhain alignment is through there. So, but archaeologists speculate that the pole was put there originally to align the stones. And there is, if you look closely under the grass, there is still the hole of where the ancient post was. Now, to attempt to explain Grange, I'm going to go back to Serbia again to look at a site of circles that look to me a lot like Grange B, and some of their circles are actually bigger. Now, most of these Serbian ancient circle sites are on a mountain site in southeast Serbia called Bogova Gomno. There we go. I'm going to show you. Here's a mapping chart there. Someone has there's the circles or bits of circles, aerial photograph, and someone's drawn some lines in it. Let's give you a little bit. This is a picture of the landscape. That's the landscape within there as well. And Bogova, there's another picture, a faint picture of those circles there. Right, I think that's the best I could show you of that. Oh, here's another one. There's some circles, actual circles in Bogova, and I think I've got another one for you here. Those are sort of ancient remains of those. And those circles are well south of the Bogotan temple that I talked about in previous episodes, south of the Bogotan temple of the Vinkas. So these circles I've just shown you would have been on the edge of the Vinca culture, and that I linked to Mag Slec during the past episodes and the start of this episode as well. Now, those stone circles, show you again, they regard them as being southern circles, is what the general name that's given to them is southern circles in translation. And we can link those actually link those by a modern Gregorian calendar by a few days, because they do hold celebrations in Serbia from the 30th of July, and it ends in the 4th of August. And so that's a few days before the point of the cross quarter of lunas happening. Now, that week in Serbia, that 30th of July, 4th of August, is known as Krasovi, something like that. And there's some people getting together, and it's a fire festival, and they seem to have the three fires, but they're not just, those fires are not in the circles anymore. but it is to them, it's a week. Krasovia, if it's actually translated, is telling you that it's a week of lightning and fires. The people get into celebration. They do the same things that they do in the Grange circle. Look, you've got the drummers going on, but they're not necessarily in the circle in the same way, but probably in other parts in Serbia. It's and there's probably some chanting as well. And the full moon that's closest to that week is called the thunder moon. And there's a nice bit of a thunder. And sure enough, this time of year, and we've had it here, the thunder, right after the last full moon, we have had thunder as well. So that's quite appropriate. And the thunder and grain storing full moon, that was 9 days ago here, Friday the 12th of August. Have I got that right? Is my math right? No, it's more than 9 days ago. Let's see. It was 12 days ago, wasn't it? Right. There we go. Now, in Ireland, Grange B circles that same week as they have in Serbia. That's Crom Dubh. It's the week of Crom Dubh. And there's an imagery of Crom Dubh that's been circling around Ireland every now and again. But the main day of that week is actually the 2nd of August on the modern Gregorian calendar. Now, that day that is called Crom Dubh is regarded as being that transition of being the last day of summer, entering into the first day of autumn, which, if we use the sidereal time, that's the cross-quarter time. And in some stories, that's talked of as being a celebration, not of only just the sun god Lough, but of the thunder god Lough as well. And I know many people would cringe as the Serbian tradition there, and what I've just told you, has been changed somewhat to suit the modern Gregorian calendar. But it has been, the Gregorian calendar has actually changed into a popularist acceptance. So, I find it's near impossible to steer people back from that popularist acceptance, where they talk about Imbolc on February the 1st and Beorhtanar on May the 1st and Lunasar on August the 1st. Hard to switch people back to the cross-quarter times. I know one or two teachers are trying to do that, but of course you can't just tell people. They've somehow got to feel it in their hearts that that's what they do. Anyway, in Serbia, this 2nd of August day, known as the Thunder God, what they do, they celebrate this lad. It's called Perun, and I'm going to try and get to use some Perun. I showed you there's our Crom Dubh, and there's Perun. That's an ancient picture, nothing like Crom Dubh, but that's an ancient collected picture. But people start carving this. I forget what town that is. That's a triple entity of Perun. And if any of you are familiar with the work of Mike in Sligo, Michael Quirk, and he carves a lot of Dagda, a lot of Doida, a lot of Lough figures. And in Serbia, that's in someone's garden or in a wood. In Serbia, a lot of people, they get themselves Perun idols, which they bring out and they take along to the Krasovi celebrations. Now, certainly ask questions as you go along. As I say, I'm really coming up with some strange stuff. It's only me speaking. It'll give me an excuse to talk about something else. If you ask questions or make points or your own experiences over what I'm talking about. So there we go. In Serbia, that 2nd of August, it's the day of the thunder god Perun. It's also, they call some areas, I think it's up as you go towards the Slavic countries, it's Trigslav. He's suddenly got the name from Perun, goes to Trigslav. And also Leos, the thundering sun god Leos, which that really has come over from Helios in the Greek. And it's worth noting, as I say, the Grange Circle B is also called Leosh. I don't know. It's on the edge of translation, but it's a thought. And I think of that because Leos is where I live, because there is a mound nearby. It's a she or fairy mound. It's Lois Dadanáin. How appropriate. So since I'm talking about the tribe along the Danube in this series of the Tour Dadanáin. Anyway, the initial purpose of the Bgovo-Gumno circles in Serbia, it's believed that they started off as being astronomical observation areas, being complexes for that, for doing the observations, watching the stones, moving the stones, drawing the charts, putting the calendar together. So you got the population would have got the solar cycle together, which interestingly, they regard the summer solstice as being the start of that year in ancient Serbia. And for some archaeologists, the Bgovo-Gumno sun circles in Serbia, they've helped to understand, as I say, there we go, there and bring it back. There's some of the calculations, and the one thing it seems to have helped archaeologists understand is possibly how these Grange circles worked and how they developed. The Grange circles here by Lough in County Limerick. Now, some researchers even believe the Bgovo-Gumno sun circles are actually part of the origin of the original structure of the Jewish and Christian religions. I'm not going to go into that in depth, but that's worth chasing up if you can. And thinking of that origin of the structure of Jewish and Christian religions, considering in ancient Serbia, there's a Serbian word for food, and it's hrana. And that is in modern language there, and it's pronounced as rana. And elsewhere, this word seems to have been pronounced, wait for it, grana. And as I say, there we go. I'll say that again if I get to it. Harana, pronounced as rana, which has somehow changed its pronunciation to grana. And the word gra is still used in Serbia and northwards to describe legume seeds, beans, other seeds, because the actual meaning, as I say, old words, they're not about things, they're descriptions. And grana, what it's talking about is small, round seeds. Now, hold on to the words grana and the goddess Gronya as well, because I'm going to return to the Grange B circle, and there's two stones of great significance there. You might be familiar with this. First, let's look at this big, huge, you've already seen it a few times. There we go. That's the big, huge rectangular stone, and that's actually known as the Crom Dubh, that stone there. And as I said a couple of minutes ago, Rannoch is a very ancient Gael word, or Gaelic word, and it's gone through some really clumsy translations. It's one of those words that doesn't translate out into other languages. It's simply its own language. It's its own description of a condition, but the clumsy translation has been division and department. So Crom Dubh stone is probably a special, large, separate reverence place for Crom Dubh. May it be the stone that was brought into the more modern circle when it became threshing. Now that stone there, it's 4 meters high, 13 feet, and it weighs 40 tons. I don't know how they got the weight for it. I don't think they put it on scales. But the one thing to me, the one thing to point out, it was also, and it still is in some cases, but it was used for quite many years, Christian years, early Christian years from the 12th century onwards, I think, as a garland Sunday time. And so it's where the young women used to leave their garlands whole or broken. Again, go back to the Garland Sunday, Bilberry and Garland Sunday episode where I explain that in great detail, especially going up on the hills. And the church loved to get the people down from the hills because of the fornication they believed went on up there. They tried to get them into the cemeteries or into the holy wells. But I think this was probably acceptable as well. So this was used as a place for women to leave their garlands. If they leave them whole, then they're not expecting to be married or have children in the year ahead. But if it's broken, they put the garlands broken there. They're asking for gratitude because they now know that they are pregnant and expecting. So I think this, well, it's said that the Garland Sunday use here It actually happened in early medieval, well, middle medieval, let's say 9th century, perhaps especially 12th century, but it came to a pause when Pope Gregory introduced, almost forced his calendar on the people we did to do. As soon as he did that, the Garland Sunday didn't happen. So I think the Garland Sunday wasn't the last Sunday of July, in that it was aligned to the cross quarter time. That's a speculation anyway, but that's an early bit of Garland Sunday. As I say, go back to the Bilberry Sunday and Garland Sunday episode for more of that. Now, beside this huge stone, there's this lovely little pile of little stones. There you go. It's like, to me, it's like a pile of risen flatbreads. And as you see, people are now donating coins there. That's a recent thing, a recent trend, because when I think I've been visiting here since about 1970, 71. That wasn't a practice there. I think this seems to have started up 2008, 2009 onwards. Anyway, that pile of stones is said to represent Ethna. Now, I'm not talking about Balor's daughter Ethna, but an Ethna that was known as the Grain Child. And she's a she or fairy wife, and said to be the she or fairy wife or mistress of Crom Dubh. So there she is. Have I got the picture of the two? You might see her here. So there we go. There's Crom Dubh and wife. Wife to the left in the darkness, in the shadow there. Anyway, the mistress. Anyway, but like the Serbian sun circles, it seemed like this Grange B was long held as an observatory. And it's a lovely observatory picture. And I think we got it. There you go. That's a bit of a dark picture. It's not covering the entire screen because you see my hands whapping away each side of it. But that's, I think, is that Ken Williams? I'm not sure. But that's actually a Sawan sunset about to happen there. And that's the alignment of Sawan sunset. And that's from an entrance. So that's it. That's being used as an observatory right there. And anyway, going back to that biggest stone, as I say, Rannoch Crom Dubh, because I talked to you about Harana and Rana, because it's the celebration of the grain time, should it be better named Rannoch Rana Grana? That's my suggestion. All right. And that would sort of translate as plenty of food from the grain. I think it'd be very appropriate. Anyway, I briefly mentioned the name of Gronya relating to a goddess. There's so many artist impersonations. I didn't know what to choose because very difficult to actually get an interpretation because there's so many different interpretations of who and what Gronya is, or even Anya. But Gronya is an old Irish word. It means grain, cereals, corn. Obvious, I would say. And there's some thought that Crom is actually saying Gronya too. The Grom somehow has been twisted, or the other way around. Crom and Gronya were once the same word. And if so, that put have quite an effect on the masculine deity interpretation of Crom. But I've already mentioned that Crom Dubh had his mistress Ethna, so that kind of dissolves that away a bit, doesn't it? I also suggested that Crom Cruach is of the sun, and reverence of cereals being ripened by the sun. I don't have a picture of that, but what I do have is the sun does have another male deity, Lough. We have Lough as a sun god is talked about as that. So there's a lot of crossovers, as I've mentioned, sometimes between Crom Cruach and Lough, and also of Tigamas, which I mentioned earlier. My own founding interpretation of Crom Dubh, though, is being symbolic of the cut and harvested cereals. That's one direction to explore. And as such, the Crom Dubh story seems potentially to hold the possibility of holding a feminine deity. And as I say, here we go. Here, Ethna, the wife, in the shadows there of the dark. And there's, Crom Dubh is of the dark, really, but Crom Cruach of light. I'm sort of trying to twist it too much, I think. Anyway, let's go back. The dove being of the dark, I wonder, when the dark about the underground, being the womb, being the place of collection of water, anything like that holds a feminine deity as usual. There's not many male deities underground. But there's some mythology also that changes all of that interpretation, my speculation, the whole works, because in some stories, Crom Dubh is described as the actual carrier of the cereal seeds. It's said that he's the one that carries the barley and rye and oats and eventually wheat. Everywhere is him that carried it. And the Crom Dubb's heavy weight of seeds is said to be the reason why he has a stooped over back in imagery. Now, if Crom Dubh is a seed carrier, then surely that would make him a Bealtaine deity, wouldn't you think so, rather than a Lughnasa deity? Now, saying that instantly puts me into the thought of the Janus figure again on Boar Island in Fermanagh, the one with the two heads. Because in Janus mythology around the world, it's about connecting the past with the future. And if the Janus figures are on each side of a bridge or an arch, what we do is walk under in order to stay present. And we should never look at the faces of the past or present, or that's bad luck. So we're walking under the arch of the Janus to stay present and focused on the present. But of course, you can't walk between those. Look at the weaving there. Those two heads are interweaved together. We can't do that on Boar Island. So is this figure of a symbol of at this time, from the putting the seeds into the harvest, from the Bealtaine to Lughnasa time, which is the grain growing season? Would that be a season of Crom Dubh to Crom Cruach? I'm going to come back to that again in a moment. But what I've not mentioned is the huge Cranach Crom Dubh stone in the Grange Circle. It once had a bull carved on it, and I don't have. Oh, yes, this. Yeah, just think of that. That is said to have had a bull carved on it, and I think again, Kenneth Williams needs to come along and do his mysterious. It's probably there, and if he uses his lightning, I wouldn't be surprised if he gets an engraving of a bull one day to come out of that. But it's assumed the bull has totally faded away. So Shadows and Stone Man, Ken Williams, what do you say to that? Can you work magic on it? Anyway, I'm going to talk a bit about that bull as well, as I get to talk about a bit more on Crom Dubh a bit later. So you've got some comments. Let's take a little break for a couple of comments here. Jackie Queely. Jackie Queely says she can see the bull. There you go. And when I must admit, when you go up close to it and you get right shadows on it, I've been trying to agree with that. And Susan Samuels arrived. Hello. I hope you'll get onto that. Yes, and there's Jackie Queely reminding me of the John Barleycorn Association, which I would have included in the Crom Cruach session that I did, but I just didn't have any time on that. But anyway, I hope you'll enjoy the playback, those of you who are joining, because I haven't got far to go before I round this up. And I can see the face clearly, legs and long body. There you go. Perhaps I ought to wipe my computer screen, although I don't get the full screen like you. I'm just looking at a miniature screen of this. Now, I'd like to take a moment to think again about the Grange circles, especially the giant B as a threshing circle. There we go. That's an artist. There you go. There's someone who's just used bold colours. There's your Grange circle there. There's your Crom Cruach, the first cutting of the sheaf onto the pole there, and in the centre there. And Jackie's looking forward to looking back at that. So there we go. That's an artist's impression of the threshing circle. And well, turning Grange into a threshing circle doesn't sound highly spiritual, does it? But I think it actually is. Now let's go back to into Serbia, where the first day of thrashing, the first sheaf is then thrown on top of what they call a stoza. They call that a stoza, that pole that's there. And I talked about Tiganmas coming over from Pomerania and doing that on Mag Slek. And then, of course, with the way the story has changed, because Tiganmas brought over metal, he showed people how to extract metals from soil and smithing. And so eventually the story changed from that into the gold and silver idol. So away went the sheaf. Anyway, the central pole in the middle of the circle with the threshing floor, it stays there to the end of the threshing. Now, by tradition, that cut sheaf is stuck on the top, as I say. And it seems that Cruach in the old Irish, and certainly old Irish legends, and you go into the Gaelic, it does seem to mention that it's a description of a heap of grain. But I tend to wonder, does Cruach actually mean sheaf of grain? Now, around the Balkans, there's a word, Cruach, and that sounds to me a bit similar to Cruach. And in the Balkans, Cruach translates as a heap of grain. And when you make a loaf of bread from directly from the first grain, from a heap of grain, if you actually make your own flour and make a loaf of bread, that's known as a cruach. And that's a celebration loaf of bread. So there we go. We got cruach there in Serbian. So let's consider how the Grange in Limerick interprets using those thoughts. I've read elsewhere, sorry, no citations, but the word Grange, to me, it kind of reminds me of other words, Gronsi, Gronsai, and Gronsiak. There are old Irish and Gaelic words. And all of those, they sort of translate out. If you try and translate them out in English, the translation doesn't come out so much as grain, but as granary. And in England, granary is something on a monastic farm. It's said to have come from monastic tradition. So why a monastic farm? Why not a granary from just a farm? Now, there's a thought that many medieval monasteries were built on the grounds of old granges. And this, we say, is a grange, a stone circle that was used for thresh. Eventually, it was used initially for astronomical purposes in order to do the calculations, to build up a calendar, and then eventually the threshing, then the pole in the middle used to tether the animals to do the threshing. So it's said that the medieval granaries were built on the old granges. And granges, as I say, ancient times, threshing floors, and many, if not all, were dedicated, it seems, to Crom Cruach or Crom Dubh, to some sort of god or goddess of grain anyway. But some people today will believe that the Crom's mythology is a very patriarchal story, and that the true dedication this time wasn't of the Croms, but of Grania, of Onya, and even of Tailchew, the famous Meath and Terror story. But for now, I'm going to linger with the word Gronsiak for threshing, the threshing floor. And there's some threshing going on in rural Serbia. The horses are doing the threshing there with a stone circle there. And the other thing to think of, farming is controlled by weather and local climate change. And the weather can be aligned by the sun and circle as well. So by having that calendar, people who are studying that, they can understand how the weather's going to be changing. And now, in order to know when specific farming activity needs to be done, especially the sowing and the reaping, the farmers need to know pretty much exact dates. To determine exact dates, the farmers or their wise advisors, perhaps today we call them druids and shamans, use the configured stone circle stones for solar observations, which were their clocks and calendars of those ancient days. But it does seem there was a hierarchy of farmers. Don't fully understand that, but it was the ordinary farmers. We have this with the furbolgs and the Tuatha Dé Danann when we listen to the stories of those. There's a sort of hierarchy of the Tuatha Dé Danann over the furbolgs. And above those farmers were the scholars. Those are the ones whose lives were dedicated to observing and calculating the solar year and lunar months. And because they were doing all that stuff and making calendars, they didn't have time for farming. Those scholars would decide where the alignments are and provide a seasonal clock for the year. In fact, I think that goes on now because it's amazing how many people I've seen that write books and even bring out magazines on permaculture, for example. And they're so busy doing the magazines and video series and all this stuff on permaculture. They just haven't time to go out and do the permaculture. So they get a bunch of other people in, volunteers. They'll call in woofers, and they'll call it a course to get people in to pay you for actually doing their garden, doing your gardening for you. So it's very much that same hierarchy there. So when storytellers talk about the eventual settled relationships of the Firbolgs and the Tuatha Dé Danann, it does seem the Tuatha Dé Danann had the rank of being the solar and astronomical observers and the sidereal year calculators, while the Firbolgs did most of the actual farming. But however, I'm probably simplifying that far too much, because the Tuatha Dé Danann did seem to settle and dominate what's now Meath, Meath, Leinster, and the various tribes of the Firbolgs. They were scattered as different tribes, which generally called Firbolgs over Ulster, Connaught, and down there in Munster. Now, Grange B stone circle is known to have a strong alignment. There we go. There's the solstice alignment. There it is. It's over the Rannoch stone, the Crom Cruach stone there. That's the sunset. No, that's rising sun. Sorry, rising sun over the summer solstice. That's a big gathering time. And it's during this summer morning, solstice morning, the sun shines. I'll show you again. Yeah, Cameron person probably wasn't aligned. It does actually come over that large stone. It's the largest stone in the Grange Circle, and it's known as the Crom Dubh stone. Now, during that solstice morning, the sun shines on top of that Rannoch stone, and it is the most popular gathering time of the year. And some visitors, they actually go up to that stone and they set up some pop-up and fold away again afterwards. They have pop-up altars, and they put those all around that stone. Now, on a sunny summer morning, it casts a shadow directly to the center of the circle, right where the ancient pole hole is. Sorry, I haven't got any photos of that. But today, the visitors actually seem to light a fire. They light fires over where the pole, that's pretty close to where the post hole was. And that fire lighting, when I talked about it last week, boy, there's some controversy over that. There really is. But the fire there is with full approval of the Casey farmers. They're the landowners, but the archaeologists, the OPW people, and even some of the locals, they're actually horrified, because there is this sort of constant debate. Should the celebrations keep going like they were, with the fires, the drum circles, the chanting, and all that stuff, or should that all stop and this become like a museum piece for preservation? Because there is a fear that too much of this goings on will wear away the circles and they won't be there for future generations. So it's a constant argument over that. But as I say, the landowners are allowing this with full approval, but the archaeologists are not too keen on it whatsoever. But having an annual summer solstice morning, to actually have a sunny one, was said to be much more reliable than it is today. It clouds over a lot more these days. But determining the exact time of summer solstice, a very important point of the solar year, is recognized. In ancient times, that was the starting point of their solar year. That confirmed the accuracy of their calendars. So it seems the summer solstice was the alignment not only for the solar calendars, but also the creation of the 13 months lunar calendar. And that's accurate. The lunar calendar is accurate annually. And being able to determine the dates through a lunar calendar provides a very good prediction of what the potential weather is going to be for each part of the lunar cycle. Now, for ancients, that provides an understanding or an interpretation that the sun and the warmth is the will of the sun god. And that's the Biltner, that's a big calling on. And this is combined with the will of the earth goddess as well. So a lot of this comes to the fore over the summer solstice as well. Now, traveling around Ireland today, it may seem that the farmland is now all covered with grazing cows and sheep. There's very little blocks of wheat and, well, hardly any blocks of wheat, but consider barley and oats, the original cereals. They're imported. Yeah, so the farming's changed, but in ancient times, local grown cereals has become essential for the food security and survival of entire families. Now, seed saving people are starting to encourage people to actually grow a few oats in their garden and get the feel of growing oats and threshing them at lunas a time and using the seeds crushed down and make a little bit of flour and then perhaps make a straw hat with the straw you got left over. So that I think you'll see grow is a keep that connection to the tradition. Grow some oats in your garden. Anyway, it reminds you that this was all about food security and survival for entire families, clans, and tribes in ancient times. There was no importing grains, oats, barley, wheat, rye from the UK, from Europe, formerly Russia, of course, Ukraine, or the USA. Now, in Ireland, cereals can be sown. Any cereals can be sown when the soil thaws. And the temperature of the soil, once it's got above 5 degrees centigrade, 41 Fahrenheit, you can at least get the oats in. If it's below 5 degrees, then your seeds are not going to germinate. They're just going to go moldy and just rejoin the soil again. Now, Crom Dubh, wandering around with his heavy sack of seeds to share, is said to have ensured the continuance and abundance of the starting and the reaping of an abundance harvest. The reason is he'd go around with the seeds at the right time, so they're sown at the right time, and there'd be the abundance. That's how the storytellers put it. Now, 5 centigrade, 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Here, that we get that temperature from the end of March until the end of April. That's when it's first at that temperature. And then after then, the soil becomes warmer. And then at the summer solstice there, the soil actually, though it doesn't feel it above the ground, the soil with that warmth, with the long light days, the warmth actually can increase to 20 degrees centigrade, 68 Fahrenheit by the time of the summer solstice. So cereals were, and they're sown around the 15th of April, if we consider the modern Gregorian calendar. And after the cereal germinates, it takes about 105 to 115 days. Well, for barley and also spring wheat and oats, it takes 105 to 115 days for all those to grow and ripen. And this is why the celebrated harvest time is the last day of July, according to the Gregorian calendar. Though with ancient sidereal time calendars, this would have been around 6th or 7th of August now. Now, for communities that did not have a resident astronomy mathematician, they watched the moon. And so the sowing would be at the pink full moon. And the pink full moon is there. That's when the herb robert, saxifrage, primroses, buttercups, marsh marigolds are all coming out then. So there's an indication that full moon at that time is the pink full moon. That's a good, you can take a chance and sow then. And then you can harvest 4 supermoons later, which is the barley moon. 112 days later is the barley moon after that pink moon. So commence your cereal sowing at the pink moon, and you're not going to do too bad doing your harvesting at the barley moon. And of course, you would have the entities of Crom Cruach-Crom Dubh and Anya overseeing. Now, the threshing of the harvesting cereals in honor of the sun god. Let's do some threshing there. There we go. There's another threshing picture. They're just getting the horses ready for threshing on that one. Or maybe they've done a bit of threshing and they're just raking the straw. I'm not sure what's going on there. Anyway, it's definitely part of the threshing process going on there. And also, as I say, the sheaf on the pole is thanks to the sun god, but there's also thanks to the earth goddess as well for the water that caused the incubation and giving birth to those seeds too. Anyway, I better talk a bit more about Crom Dubh. Have you got any questions or any comments for me there before I get on to the Crom Dubh? And thank you for holding on to this. It's definitely a long session of me talking. Now, the Crom Dubh mythology seems to have descended from Crom Cruach, who I've been talking about, and it's become more of a worship. Crom Dubh is perhaps more of a worship figure in mythology than a god. So Crom Dubh is regarded, it seems, as a figure more than as a god. A bit like other figures, the wooden figures that we have for different characters. Now, the practice of Crom Dubh somehow fell into the Gregorian calendar, and in many areas, Crom Dubh Sunday is the last Sunday in July. But for the past couple of 100 years or so, that last Sunday of July has become Bilberry Sunday to a lot of people, Garland Sunday to other people, especially church people. But even within the traditions of Bilberry Sunday and Garland Sunday, gifts of crops and produce and flower gardens have been taken up hillsides, and they've been offered to a fallen dark one, which these days is a kayak or a hag or a goddess of the Mother Earth, rather than some male or even female Crom. Now, to me, it makes a lot of sense, as the dark under the earth is the realm and domain of the feminines, where the earth womb is. And all that grows above the ground all comes out of that womb. So it's possible that Crom Dubh is really a 5,000-year-old deity. Have I got something on that? Oh, this is a stolen one from, I forget, Crowan, isn't it? Crowan, County Kerry. That there was a wall there that they tried to hold that, and it's been stolen. I don't think it's ever been found again, but that's a Crom Dubh one in figure in Kerry anyway. And now going back to the Balkans, there's a deity like Crom Dubh known as a Romy Dubha. And Romy Dubha is a real fearful thing. If I can get the picture up here. Here he is. That's one interpretation of a Romy Dubha. That's the best I could get. I'm sure by next year I'll find some better pictures. Anyway, there he is in the dark there. Romy Dubha, that's the Serbian Crom Dubh. And that's known, Romy Dubha is actually known, ugly looking thing he might be, but he's the giving god. And he was also known in the regions all the way from the Balkans to the Baltic as the Bog, and or Dashbog, or I can't think of any other pronunciations, but Dabog, Dashbog. Turbs once believed that all of them were originally born from the womb of Dabog. It's almost as if it doesn't have a gender. It's there. It's the thing. It's the god in its manifestation. And all the Serbs believe that everything in themselves were all born from that entity. Now, Romy Dubha is also known to the Serbs as the Great Elder or Ancestor, the Great Ancestor. But of course, the Christians came along and they got to Serbia. That's the devil. Because some of the images of him there is actually with horns on. Reindeer horns, bull horns. And of course, we've got creatures like Herne the Hunter here. You might think of Soranunus, similar to that. And of course, when we look at a bull skull, we can get similar images to that. So, and not forgetting the Minotaur, the half man, half human in the Crete story. I'm sure it's related to that in some way. So Romy Dubha goes back to the Balkan mythology. That's 5,000 to 6,000 year old mythology there from Serbia. Now, Romy Dubha from the Vincas and Crom Dubh seem to be linked by a bull, or at least some kind of two-horned creature symbolism. So again, I ponder over whether Crom Dubh is a seed carrier or a Beltner god. Now, Crom Dubh is also imaged as a dark being with horns. If I can get back to my dark being, did that dark being I had have horns? Let's see if I can find it again. I think I've lost it in my. No, I can't. I've lost it in my photo collection. Just imagine. There we go. There it is. There's Crom Dubh with the horns there. And coming out of winter, Crom Dubh coming out of the dark of winter with seeds. They're going to be germinated by the summer sun. Now, it won't let me go with that photo. Sorry. I want to get to the next photo. So that's the dark creature coming out with the seeds, ready for the sowing, ready for the oncoming of the summer sun, because you're out of winter. So what is Beltner time? It's, if you go for the cross quarter, it's the middle of Taurus, isn't it? And the age of Taurus, let's have a Taurus bull up. The age of Taurus was about 4,000 to 2,000 BC. But Romy Dubha, if we go back, that's going back into the age of Gemini. And again, that causes me to think of the Janus figure, the two twins. Do I dare try and find that one up? The two twins of the Janus here. It's difficult to get back to them. I'm probably sunk for that one. Now, I hope you've got it in memory about the Janus. Okay, we'll just leave that one as read, the 2 Janus figure, because I can't locate them at all. But you've visited them anyway. And I mentioned earlier that the Rannoch Crom Dubh, the largest stone of Grange B, once had a bull carved on it, and some of you are actually seeing it right now. And the time of soil warming, germination, and cereals popping up out of the ground is an outcome of the Bealtaine celebration of the time of mating and fertility. So from the spring to the summer mating time is the exact, as I say, Taurus is right in the middle there on the sidereal time calendar when it is Bealtaine. The cereal seed sowing is just before the time Taurus starts. And at Lughnasadh, the original sidereal Crom Dubh day is in the middle. If you go for the sidereal, you're exactly in the middle of Leo, a lion. And funnily enough, I've actually seen, I forget which language, I talked about the Lough being a mound or a place of reverence. I think in some African countries, I forget which country, but Lough means lion. Anyway, the barley and other seed crops are regarded as the end of crop growing season when we're on the Lughnasadh. Now, to me, this indicates observation circles were more than moon observations, but constellation observations as well, seeing where the outcome of Taurus the bull, Leo the lion, etc. So the cereal season is started at the time of Taurus the bull. So it seems that the sacrifice of the Lughnasadh fasting of the time, and I talked about sacrifice last week, it may have been the bull. They may have had a bull, certainly a cow. So the idea is, we go off to the shop and we buy a piece of beef or a steak and all that stuff. And we got so used to that in ancient times, they couldn't do that. If you've got a cow, or especially a bull, that is someone that's become part of the family. And so, but you're going to survive. You're going to have a feast. There's all this abundance that comes after Lughnasadh. It's a time of trading. It really is the month of abundance in August. So you're going to have this feast. You're going to include beef, because you're not going to have beef any other time of the year. A lot of Ireland, actually, they only took the blood from the bull and the cow. They didn't actually chop up the entire bull. That was more of a Scottish thing, it seems. Anyway, I think I'll talk about that probably with Samhain stuff. But anyway, anything that came from the cow, whether it's the blood or the meat, that would have gone with the bread of the new grain flour. And that's the feasting. And then the vegetables as well. What would they have had in ancient times? They probably would have had onions, leeks, salsify, that type of stuff. But somehow, you remember the Killyculligan stone. Let's see if I can pull that up again. I talked about that a couple of weeks ago. If I can pull that up. It's right down here. Let's see. Killyculligan stone. It said that those symbols there, that the blood was actually poured over the top there, and it ran down to illuminate those symbols. And that was from the blood, either from the sacrificed animal or from the blood that was taken, because you might be familiar with the full Irish. You have the not the sausage, the black pudding. And in the earlier days, ancient times, that would be some of the cattle blood mixed with the grain and made into the patties. So maybe it was some of that blood there. But anyway, the Kilculligan stone is definitely related to that. But there's another thought for the bull symbol too. In the threshing circle, horses are portrayed as moving around the circle, as I've showed the photographs there. But to move around the cereal, to thresh them, was essential. That's what the animals did. Separated the seeds from the straw. But before they had horses, it was probably bulls, oxen, that did that work. So the bull may have been revered at Lughnasadh because the job was done. They were going to be retired from the threshing circle. So it's thank you, bull. Have reverence for the bull. Maybe that's connected with taking some of the blood from the legs. But anyway, when they were doing the threshing, sorry, I can't answer the manure challenge. What happened to the manure on the grain? I don't know the answer to that one. But after the cereal is threshed and stored, it seems we may start to think of an underworld kayak or goddess that's behind the veil. And she's now, the threshing's done, the fields are empty, and whilst the threshing and the celebration and feasting is going on, the debris from the harvest is starting to transform, ready for the winter. It's going to go down underground, and it's going to form into the processed into being the new life, thanks to all of the threads of the toadstools, mushrooms, of the fungi underground, all ready for the next germination, for the soil, for the next growing season. So it's the pulling of the debris from the harvest underground through winter. What the reverence is that? That seems to be well symbolized to me when people make corn dollies and costumes that are made from the straw for winter events that are gathered after the grains have been threshed and piled up. Now, usually with nature folklore, I focus on the reverence of water trees in connection to the she deities Ogham and scribing. And I think before I go, I will say some words about Anya, who to me relates to Gronya, and the river on the edge of Crom Cruach-Crom here. There's a river on the edge that runs, that goes into Ballyconnell anyway. Today it's known as the Shannon Waterway, which is boring. For a while, it was known as the Woodford River, but I think before the 19th century, it was always the Gronya River. That's a lovely coincidence, isn't it? All Magslek and all the Crom Cruach we're talking about right beside the River Gronya. And as some people say, Anya, some people describe Anya as being Anu or Danu, the goddess of the Tuatha Dé Danann. And the Tuatha Dé Danann, as I've said in the earlier series, part of the series, they were one tribe that brought the farming culture from the Vinca culture along the Danube. So they started in South Serbia, the south end of the Danube, where the Iron Mouth is, and eventually arrived in what is now Ireland. Now, living by the Grange Circle, there was a very popular Shanachie storyteller. His name was Tom McNamara. You might have heard of him, might have seen his videos. And he told many stories of Grange and Lough. And in his stories, he would often bring up something about the deity of Anya. Unfortunately, Tom died in 2001. He was 75 years old. But there are women's groups that they come and visit Grange, and the reason they visit there, not for Crom Dubh, not for Crom Cruach, it's for Anya. It's a reverence for Anya, especially at the solstice time. And I wonder if I can I pull that picture up of them? One of the solstice ones I thought was spot on for this. Again, I did plan my pictures as well as I should have done, so forgive me for that. Is this it? No. Yeah, that's the one. Now, come back. A group of women there. There's reverence to that stone. They're not thinking. They're probably not thinking of Crom Dubh there. They're thinking of that stone. They've just had the sunrise, the summer solstice. So to them, it's Anya who beamed down the light of the midsummer sun. Not a sun god such as Lough, Crom Cruach, or even Tiganmas. Anya is told as being the goddess of all light, sun and moon light. And groups of women greet the solstice sunrise, and there'll be drumming, there'll be chanting, there'll be reverence to either a goddess Anya, or even a queen Anya, or even a she queen Anya. And so you get the drumming, chanting, and dancing. Now, the women that do group together like this, there's some men there, of course, but once the sunrise has happened, a lot of them now, they move off to another place. It's 5 kilometers away, 3 miles away. It's Knock-Anya. It's a silver hill. It's a fairy mound. Southeast of the circle here. And there they go for more union, communion, drumming, and chanting and dancing for Anya. And maybe for their own facility, if they had successful conception, especially in ancient times, from their frolics at the Bealtaine time. But because really Anya is not only of the sunlight and the blessing of the harvest, but Anya is also regarded as a love and fertility goddess as well. So the drumming, chanting, and dancing is said to invoke love spells upon women, upon everybody, but especially from the women. They say if they are there at the summer solstice, they get the blessings from Anya over them. She will bless them, so especially if they are pregnant, so that they will bear magical children that are connected to the guidance of Anya, and especially the guidance of the She and the Fey realm. So it's told that the women practice is not of Celtic romance or recent New Ageism, because this ceremony by women is told of as perhaps going back as early as 2000 BC. Now, there may be more references to this. Go to ducas.ie site. I haven't got them up here yet. Next year I will do stories related to that. But what purpose does all of this ancient Crom and Lunasa and Anya mythology, what purpose does it have with us today, really? I think Lunasa, and especially if you're at the circle, the Grange circle, it's a smell of the roses moment. It slows down our time. We get to reflect. And our culture is now about going out to the store, ordering pizzas, going to the supermarket, blah, 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 blah. And we seem to, but I think perhaps there is a movement, more of a movement to think more about some return to a more sustainable lifestyle and quests, of course, for personal internal peace. Now, it's good to slow down in a sanctuary for a moment to be reminded of what's going on in the realm of nature and within the seasons, so that we're part of them. Now, there's a modern fascination with stone circles. There seems to be, the fascination really, I think, started up during the Celtic Romance years of the 19th century, but it really revolved during the cult years of the 70s and 80s. Everybody was reading John Michel books, View Over Atlantis, Megalithomania, that type of stuff. And then there was the blogs. There's the she.com, isn't there? The .com years in the 90s, beautiful blogs that came up. And then there were group forums all about this stuff, stone circles and so forth, through the noughties. And then through the 10s and 20s, look at all this exponential increased interest in stone circles and megalithic sites, and all these photos that people are gathering and sharing, and videos of visiting these sites. And what's happened is a phenomenal increase of people visiting these places. And it's quite what people do on these sites. It seems to become a much more dramatic practice than the quiet visits that I was used to when I visited places in the 50s, 60s, 70s. It's a whole different visitation when I go to these places now. So you got more practice of rituals and ceremonies and fast changing interpretations. The interpretations I'm giving you now are interpretations that were around now to what I was given from my family in the 50s and even through the 60s. Very, very different thoughts about these places. The stories told were very different. Now, through this and previous nature folklore sessions of Crom, etc., I've been tempted to illustrate focus on stone circles as being essential tools for creating the existence of settled farming, and settled farming being our main way of providing our food. Though there's a lot more people growing a lot more in their gardens and setting up their small holdings. But I don't think there would have been settled farming without configuring the stone circles, sun circles. I think that element's been forgotten, that without these circles, there might not have been grain farming going on. And a lot of this forgetting of these farming origins perhaps has been replaced by a quest to discover some sort of spiritual realm within these sites. Maybe we're looking for the spiritual realm to bring peace. You know, the consumption world, the non-sustainable world. It can, you know, we're get more access to fast news. You know, if we were in the 50s, barely had a television, we might go and see Pace News Pathy News at the cinema, and then newspapers go into more hands. But now news is so automatic, and that we're so worried about what's going on in the world. We didn't have a clue what was going on outside our village. So suddenly our souls are not so much at peace. So we're looking for a spiritual realm to bring our souls to peace. And a lot of people are looking to these circles for that purpose. But even with settled farming, we're still at the mercy of water, the sun, the air, and the beautiful visions of the entities that help remind us of what this is all about. And we use the entities to understand our food, our harvest, our water, our trees, our weather even. The entities and the stories help us to understand these things, I think, a lot better than science ever does. We remember the stories of the entities much more than the science. Things such as the she, the goddess, and the fairies. And seemingly the wise people that we now call the druids and shamans, priestesses and priests. Today, we may look towards these people. We may look to people with cloaks and gowns and stuff to be our conduits and guides on our journey through the seasons, so that we can be hand in hand with the entities as our guides, our invisible friends. So I hope through doing this, we take moments to pause and observe, appreciate, and revive our intimate relationships with the water, sun, moon, air, and the earth. And that all makes our survival more possible, our joy more possible, our love certainly more possible, and abundance more appreciated at this lunar August time. So thank you for following this epic of the Croms. It's taken me a while, very long session again tonight, and thinking about how you may connect with them. Just fire away any more questions or comments or experiences for these last few minutes, because I thank you for your support. To say Woodland Bard there, or the Buy Me a Coffee Woodland Bard. I know John will. Yeah, just check it again. There we go. Nature Folklore is that's the one. Buy Me a Coffee. I'll show you this. There we go. Shadows and Stone, Ken Williams, shadowsstone.com. Go and have a look at that as well. And right. No more comments at the moment. Right. So anyway, any help makes the show possible. Well, I do this while someone else gets the food farmed for me. I'm still, as I say, I'm still trying to cover the weekly expenses. So helping out with $1, euro, pound helps. Coming up. So what's coming up? I'm off to the in Clonallis in County Roscommon, the Tree Festival, the Woodland Festival, the national one. Is beautifully done by Western Cooperative, Forest Cooperative, Western Woodland Cooperative in Sligo. They put on a fabulous festival before the COVID came along. So I assume it will be again. So I'm off for that next Sunday. 4th of September, I'm going to be back with Apple and Harvests. And that's going to be Sunday here at Lois Dadanáin as well. I should have a proper studio. I'm actually doing this on the kitchen table, believe it or not. Quickly set up. So please contribute input to the post in the Nature Folklore community for the poll there. What day would you like me to be on, or days? How long for? And what was the other thing? What time's a lovely time for you? And then, of course, Irish time, if you can put it there. So thank you. And all those polls help me reshape this Nature Folklore broadcast. No guests today. It was just me. We'll try and get some guests on next week. We'll definitely I know we've definitely got guests next week. I've already got one or two to sign. Well, not next week, Sunday week. If you're watching this archive, please keep commenting when you watch from the beginning again, because I do go through the answers. If you're watching YouTube, you can click the bell. That will remind you when the next one's coming up. I think these archive better on YouTube than Facebook. So I think if you've got no more comments for me, I think wish you well, safe week. I won't be seeing you for about 10 days on Nature Folklore. Then, if you prefer 30 minutes, I might break it all up to do 2 30-minute shows in a day, in a week, rather than the one long one on a Sunday. But you seem to be liking these Sundays anyway. There we go. Jackie says, thank you. I've got to go. Well, that's at the end of it. Crom Dubh, the dweller of deep energy associated with strong lays and dragons, etc. That's the thing I'll be bringing up in the Samhain series as well. Fantastic. Thank you very much. Enjoy a safe week full of our 10 days now, full of your wonders, inspirations, enchantments. So until Sunday week, that's all I've got. Thanks very much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again. And I think I do actually have, thank you, Cliff. Thank you for being around. Very informative as always. Brilliant. So thank you so much. I think that's it. So wish you well. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Bye, 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 bye.